Rob Zombie with the Electric Warlock Acid Witch Satanic Orgy Celebration Dispenser. Yeah. Long enough title, Rob? Jeesh. Anyway, if you're anything like me, you knew a couple of folks growing up, or you know a couple people now that were really big fans of Rob Zombie, whether it be his earliest works such as Hellbilly Deluxe, either that or Educated Horses or The Sinister Urge, or the more recent stuff. You know, Rob Zombie has had a long career. He started with White Zombie in the late 1980s, and here we are in 2016, and the dude's still kicking out music alongside of his films and his other endeavors. But, you know, it was one of those things that for a heavy, you know, artist that was on the radio that loved horror movies, it just seemed to gravitate toward a lot of folks that had those similar interests. And you probably know at least one dude and one girl, maybe multiple girls, that definitely was into this stuff. So here we are. We have a brand new album, 31 minutes roughly in length, barely making that distinction. 12 tracks, and really most of these feel like they should be either, you know, trailers for individual short films that Zombie himself should make. Either that, or he should just make this into like the weirdest horror-themed, slut-themed, rock and roll-themed anime in history. Because these song titles read like titles for anime series, you know, episodes. Here, I'll give you an example. Consider this to be the series of the Electric Warlock Acid Witch Satanic Orgy Celebration Dispenser. That's the name of the anime. So the first episode is The Last of the Demons Defeated. So maybe we have ourselves a triumphant thrust into the story. Whenever you think of being thrust into anything with Rob Zombie, you have to kind of laugh, considering how obsessed he is with sex. Second episode would be Satanic Cyanide, The Killer Rocks On, the first official real track on this album, and it's one that's, if you listen to Rob Zombie long enough, you sort of understand what the cat's all about. You kind of get it. The cat's been out of the bag for years whenever it comes to what his music really encompasses. You have this sort of like pseudo-industrial metal riffing that goes on, and it has his voice kind of powering right alongside the music, so you have mutual pounding elements in your ears, and I know what I just said, shut up. And it just causes, it's still this verse structure that has anthemic quality to it, sure enough, but it's something that the idea gets old. That's all that I'll really say in regard to that. And then we have episode number 3, The Life and Times of a Teenage Rock God. This perhaps could be the episode where we get a little bit more of a backstory. This could be the episode where we realize who the rock god is, because there are references to rock and roll later on in the album, which would be later on in the series, near the series' end. See how we're making and building this parallel world? It's kind of cool that you can do that, whether it be within your imagination or whether it be in reality. The very next track, episode 4, I guess, would be, well, everybody's fucking in a UFO. This would be the sex episode where you kind of get the picture here, but I like this song. I'm stopping right here to really just cite the fact that I dig how Rob just decides to literally transform into the hellbilly, or a hillbilly, and really just kind of go a little bit like this, you know. Have a little bit of that twang there, almost like country music, almost like George Jones on fucking steroids, you know what I'm talking about, guys? Because this is how he delivers his lyricism on this song, and quite frankly, with the delivery on these verses, it actually has some resemblance to Rapper's Delight by the Sugar Hill Gang, which is really funny. No, did he take the Sugar Hill Gang's Rapper's Delight and just decay it and change up his voice to make it sound like the redneck, you know, horror movie version of it? No, he didn't really do that. It's just the inflection that's kind of put on the words throughout the, you know, the verse rhymes, if you really want to call that, or the verse lyricism, whatever you really want to say. Kind of a neat idea. This is definitely a highlight. Episode 5 would be a hearse that overturns with the coffin busting open. I got nothing for this one. It's actually just, you know, a minute 30 seconds. It's ambient music. Once again, that whole trailer idea where it could be the trailer music for 12 different films, for 12 different directors. There you have it right there. Episode number 6 would be the hideous exhibitions of a dedicated gore whore. And this could be easily the backstory of our heroine. Either that, or perhaps even of our antagonist, all depending on how this weird anime would be written. This is one that just absolutely shimmers of Rob Zombie. Talks about all of his favorite things, obviously, but the whole concept of the gore whore is one that is always represented in a way that is just derogatory enough where it could really reference that it's a bad thing, but also praiseworthy enough where it could be perceived as a good thing. He takes a very neutral perspective toward this with his lyricism. He's always one that seems to be more inclusive than exclusive, and that's what causes a lot of his lyricism and a lot of his music to work very well. It's something that speaks about something that's so outlandish that you know that it's just for fun, or you know that it's just based off the horror element, which is something that people should transfer over to death metal, for Christ's sake. But it also has a little bit of, I guess, semi-relatability to folks that consider themselves gore whores, because there are folks out there that no doubt use those two words to describe themselves and probably don't actually understand what the term gore whore really suggests. Episode 7 would be Medication for the Melancholy. Going into Episode 8, in the age of the consecrated vampire, we all get high. I'm fairly certain that on these two episodes, we're just in the middle of one super long trip or something like that. This is where all of that great animation that you probably got, or that you got to see from those old Rob Zombie music videos comes into play. Episode 9, Super Doom Hex Gloom, Part 1. There's no Part 2, so this is going to be one of those unanswered stories. So, this is already becoming the weirdest anime in history. So there you go, we're making it even stranger. Number 10 would be In the Bone Pile. Number 11, Get Your Boots On. That's the end of rock and roll. Uh-oh. There we go. We're reaching the end of the series. We're reaching that almost crescendo point of the series, and perhaps rock and roll is the code name or the name of our protagonist, of our main character. It's the end of rock and roll. Is he dead? Is he gone? What happened to him? And then we go into episode 12, which is Warlock, which sounds like it should be like a Doctor Who episode, but in reality, this is the 5.5-minute long finale that has more of the elements of Rob's sinister sides, his sinister portion, as opposed to what you just heard for 11 tracks. He takes his time, he builds this a little bit, almost building it a little bit more like a song that is interwoven with the score for a film near the end. It's one that has a little bit more of the score element to it. And once again, I know what I said. I based that around the fact that for the last 1.5 to 2 minutes of this track, you're hearing more along the lines of ambient sound, and perhaps this, in our fantasy universe, would be talking about the fate of rock and roll. So, I understand we didn't talk too much about the music, but like I said, Rob Zombie's a man that doesn't require all of that much conversation whenever it comes to his music. Lyrically speaking, it's a very verse, chorus, verse structure by and large, by the most part, storytelling at its finest. The riffing is industrial metal, and it does have some variations, but for the most part it has a deep, chug effect to it, not in a deathcore way, but instead one that has sort of radio, radio acceptable chord patterns that are interwoven with just crazy fucked up production that really definitely takes a little bit of a page, or at least handshakes a little bit with Trent Reznor at times. And there's not much really to say. Rob Zombie's songs are fairly easy to spot out in a crowd, and that's all that needs to be stated. So as far as his discography is concerned, this album's pretty par for the course. It really is. Really, at this point in time, it seems like Rob's busy having fun with just everything. So, as far as quality control is concerned on this disc, it's one that's just kind of alright. But it's also one that exhibits a little bit of a free-flow attitude, a little bit of a free-form writing style, and you have to appreciate that a little bit. I'd probably give this album a 78 out of 100. It's a cool enough experience to listen to, but it's not one that I'm going to find myself going back to. Rob Zombie's a fun guy, and his albums at times can be very fun experiences, but they can also be extremely monotonous and a bit tedious. For those of you who really like variety, you're going to find a little bit of it on here, but not nearly enough to satisfy your palate. But I want to know what you guys think about this. I want to know what you guys think about the Electric Warlock Acid Witch Satanic Orgy Celebration Dispenser. Yeah. Tell me in the comments below, you puny man. In the description below, there's also a link to a Patreon page if you wish to support the efforts of this channel and perhaps improve my accent. Please give today, or else this accent will stay terrible forever. And also be extremely, extremely stereotypical. I'm coverkillernation. I'll talk to you guys next time. Peace.